Welcome to the content sections of our 70-20-10 examples and ideas webinar. This will be the first in our series of what will be our example webinars. This particular one is actually a little bit different to what we're going to do into the future. It doesn't have a theme to it. The future ones will have a theme to them. Also, the other thing I'm doing that's a little bit different to our other webinar recordings, what I'm trying to do is actually a summary of some of the conversations that actually happened during the session as well. These sessions are only 30 minutes long, so this recording is also a whole lot shorter. And my first thing I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about who Sprout Labs is and what we do. So essentially, Sprout Labs helps organizations that deal with complex products and services to design and redesign their digital learning programs. We work with the 70-20-10 framework as part of that process, as well as our learning way working framework. Another way to think about this is generally we work with learning objectives that are high on Bloom's taxonomy rather than low-level learning objectives. So, first scenario that I'm going to be talking about today is Rebecca, or it's from Rebecca. Rebecca's a character that you might have all seen a few times before. She's been in a couple of the webinars. And she needs to redesign her manager induction program. Now, this whole idea of having a manager induction program is a little bit of an illusion as a program as such. Normally, you don't have enough people to be able to have a cohort. It's one of those times when, as people shift from possibly being in a team to a manager or coming into a new organization as a manager, it's incredibly busy times. People need new knowledge, new skills, new expertise, but they don't always have the time to be able to take out to learn that separately from learning while working. So the classic approach to this is to take a performance support approach. And in this map, you can see that's actually part of what we've included here. Here is the idea of a manager portal. So in the past, Sprout Labs has been involved and helped organizations do these manager portals. I think there's actually a whole lot more that can happen with a manager induction program as well. It's a really good one to sit there and go, it's actually very hard to do as an event-based problem. So that's why people go to a resource-based problem and a resource-based solution of the manager portal. But there is some sort of social things you can do to possibly expand the effectiveness and efficiency of your manager's new inductions as well. And maybe induction is totally the wrong word as well. Maybe it's manager support or new manager. I'm trying to think of a word other than program. It's not coming to me quickly. So essentially, first layer of things is adding some social learning experiences to the mix. Maybe a virtual classroom. That could be a community of practice style thing that could be based on two different approaches. One could be a very much a discussion-based approach, or the other approach could be a guest speaker style approach. One thing that a lot of organizations already do is actually offer new managers mentors, and this is a really powerful spot to be in. I think this is also one of those things that the mentor and the mentee relationships sometimes form naturally as well. It's one of those beautiful on-the-job learning experiences to see. Up in the top in the 70, and the 70 sort of idea and supporting is the idea of a team log or a learning log. So we started to work with a number of organizations around introducing this idea of learning logs. So learners and employees, managers, at the end of each day, write up essentially what they've done, what they'll do differently, and what they've learnt during the day. So what it's trying to do is build in a constant reflective learning process to what they're doing. It's actually also one of those things that come quite naturally to a lot of people to write up and record what they're doing. So it's not actually that particularly unusual as an activity. The other thing about it is it's almost not always goal-driven as well. It can be something that's quite a sort of ongoing reflective process. The other idea that's down here in the 10, which is actually sort of hard because I sometimes find with these learning maps about whether or not something is in the 10 or in the 70 is quite hard. It's a challenger mobile app. So essentially, these sorts of mobile apps that I'm talking about work in a way where they push out spaced activities over a period of time, and those activities could be challenges and problems, could be people problems, could be procedural problems or system problems that a manager is going to face over a period of time. So a good example of this is budget cycles, and budgeting is always an interesting time for a new manager. Sometimes they've seen budgets being done, but they haven't actually prepared one before. So in the 3 or 4 months beforehand, it could be pushing out problems and challenges and questions and things that the manager needs to be thinking about before they get to those, before they actually have to do the task. So they've built in some really short, quick, easy practice style activities. Now, one of the things over time, as I started to work more with organizations with the 70-20-10 learning model, I started to realize and started to use this term, which quite a few other people do as well, of continuous learning. And this is incredibly linked to the idea of continuous improvement. And there is a huge body of knowledge and body of expertise and techniques around continuous improvement that can really help at an organizational and team level, especially with continuous learning. I think quite often in L&D we focus on what's actually the most challenging thing, which is actually individual learning experiences, and start by putting 70-20-10 models into PD programs. And that's not an easy thing to do. Whereas in some ways, sometimes working with teams at a continuous improvement level is actually easier. So I'm going to use an example of a continuous improvement activity that you might not have thought of as a possibility. Now, this particular slide is from one of the Sprout Labs instructional design ID cards. It's also packaged up into our ID Drops application. It is a bit old now, it needs a bit of an update. But essentially, the idea is to run something like a design critique. So, to pause for a moment to talk about what a design critique is. Design critiques are one of the core learning experiences in the creative industry. Essentially, it's a group, what I call a group learning experience, where someone puts up something that's visual on a wall and then talks about what they've been doing, what problems that they've been facing, what's been going well, what they're struggling with, and then the group gives feedback and comes up with ideas and possible questions and things to explore more. Don't particularly like the idea of the word critique because it puts it in a negative light, where quite often, if they're well run, they can be quite a positive light. Now, I've heard this same sort of process being used in other industries other than design and visual and creative industries. Technical industries like coding and software development, where essentially a team would spend an hour a week doing a code critique. Someone would put up a piece of code that they've written during the week, and then as a group they would look at that, look at ways it could be improved, and rethought to be improved. In healthcare, it's actually also one of the things. There's sometimes an actual thing where people will bring a case to a group of peers to discuss and look at together as a group learning experience. Now, during the actual live session, we did some barriers and enablers to this idea and notion of group learning experiences. There were just some really good ideas, so I'm going to actually talk through some of those as a bit of a summary. Some of the strong enablers were a strong focus on customer service and continuous improvement already. That it was a strategic focus for the business, continuous improvement, and it could be a way of getting people to, and for the leaders to promote learning as well. Some of the barriers were things like not understanding the power of collaboration, competing priorities, taking time out, and fear of asking others for help and input, which is also one of the reasons I don't particularly like the word critique as well, because I don't think that really summarizes the potential of it as a positive learning experience. Cool. So then we did a really interesting learning activity, which was actually how to help participants in a project management course practice their skills. Now, practicing project management skills has a set of risks about it. if someone's totally new to project management, you would be fairly cautious about what you'd be letting them start to do. So essentially, it's quite an interesting one because organizations spend a lot of time trying to get project management right. There's a whole culture and ecosystem around project management courses, but it doesn't always result in great projects. So some of the ideas that came out during that conversation was mentoring, and having the person who's just been in the course being mentored by someone that's experienced. The new person who's being part of project closure meetings and helping write project reports as well. Developing a mock plan. Then the other thing that was a theme in quite a few ones was breaking it down into smaller projects. So have people work on a small project first, or have them work in a staged way while they're being mentored. So they might do the project plan in a way that's highly supervised, and then depending on how they're going, then move into the actual implementation phase. Cool. So these webinars are meant to be short and sweet. There was lots more interaction during the actual session, which is why that was a lot longer. Thank you for watching this, and the next one will be on content curation. Thank you.